Now I am going to, I guess, do something a little risky considering today's climate, but I hope everyone keeps an open mind and consider the nuanced perspective I have on so-called cancel culture. On August 13th, Michael Brooks would have turned 37 years old. He was a good friend of mine, a good friend of Ben Burgess, who recently wrote a wonderful piece in Jacobin about Michael and what his upcoming project was going to be about. It's titled The Cosmopolitan Socialism of Michael Brooks. And, I think Ben did such a great job in giving this nuanced description of what Michael believed and how he saw the socialist project really accomplished in the United States. And what that really focuses on is rejecting some of the toxicity, a lot of the toxicity that comes along with cancel culture. So, a lot of what Ben said in his piece really rang true based on conversations I personally had with Michael. And I really appreciated Ben doing that because this is a topic that I think a lot of people feel terrified to approach because it might seem as though you're just serving as an apologist for incredibly bad behavior, maybe some speech that people find worthy of condemnation. But at the same time, if you take a step back and you think about things on an actual moral level, and you think about things strategically as a socialist who wants to accomplish a better country and a better world, a lot of this stuff is actually running counter to what we want to do. So after reading his piece, I went ahead and found this tweet by Michael in January of 2019. And in the tweet, he writes, "Choosing compassion in a call-out culture." And the article that he linked to in that tweet was written by a writer named Aaron Rose. He is a transgender man who worked as a diversity and inclusion specialist. And I honestly hadn't seen that tweet or read that article until recently. And so as I was reading it, I thought it was so enlightening, especially considering what Aaron would do for work, which is, go to different workplaces and train the workforce to be accepting of people who are different than them. Now, on a surface level, that sounds awesome, right? I mean, on a surface level, you want tolerance, you want acceptance, you want everyone to get along. But what Aaron found through this process was something counter to what the actual mission was. So Aaron writes, relying on a call-out culture of shame and dehumanization, however subtle or justified, as motivating tools of change will never resolve the isolation and exclusion we ultimately seek to address. So he also talks about his own experience as an inclusion specialist and how isolating and divisive it ended up being. So I want to read you a little excerpt about that. While doing the work of humanizing historically excluded minorities, I had been unwittingly dehumanizing others. It seemed natural to view my work as an us versus them quest to change some of people's minds on behalf of others. But I've come to understand that this approach will only continue to amplify the feeling of uneasy disconnection that characterizes so much of modern life, particularly online. The fear of being judged, the fear of being harmed, the fear that saying the wrong thing will result in excommunication. And that fear is real. I mean, that fear is so real that I really had to sit and think about whether I wanted to do this segment because of what I've seen online. And, the justifications that I've even seen from people on the left, these arguments about cancel culture isn't real. The people complaining about cancel culture are individuals who have these massive platforms and have a ton of privilege. And so there's really no negative impact of what people are calling out here when it comes to cancel culture. But really the truth is it has impacted and negatively impacted the livelihoods of so many private citizens who, might have tweeted something that was wrong. There's no question about it. But we need to step back and as a society question whether or not we, especially as socialists, feel comfortable destroying the livelihoods of people who made a mistake. And we also need to have a moment of self-reflection to accept the fact that we are all flawed. We all have our bad moments. And we would want to be treated with compassion, right? And so why is it that we're now finding ourselves in this toxic culture where we've decided that people are irredeemable, worthy of being canceled, and shouldn't be able to work where they've been working, shouldn't be able to find a job anywhere else? I mean, that really should be the antithesis of what we believe as socialists, right? And so Ben cites some portions of Michael's book, and it really, really hits home, especially considering some of the stuff that we're seeing today. So Michael's book is Against the Web. Please check it out if you haven't already. And in it, he writes, "I'm not arguing that no one on the left has ever said or done anything racist or sexist or transphobic, or that we shouldn't care if they do. I'm also not claiming that we should disavow the historical importance of identity in favor of a simplistic economic reductionism that tells people not to worry about merely cultural issues. That's exactly the wrong way to fight the vampire's castle," citing an essay that, had a profound impact on Michael. He shared it with me, and I think everyone should read it if you haven't already. He continues to write in his book, "What I am saying, however, is that we will continue to devour each other and thus fail to win power in society if we don't reject the confused moralism that permeates so much left-wing discourse." And you know what? We really did get a big old taste of that confused moralism just this past week, and it had to do with a progressive candidate in Massachusetts' 1st district. Alex Morse is his name. He's actually primarying a pretty disgusting corporate Democrat, Richard Neal, who squashed legislation that would end surprise medical billing. That's the kind of corporate Democrat Richard Neal is. And, we as people who want a better country, who want to actually pass policies like the Green New Deal or Medicare for All, should fight aggressively to get someone like Alex Morse elected. But it doesn't really take much for the left to turn on someone like Morse. All you need to do is put out ridiculous, vague, nonsensical allegations against him, and the left will turn on him in an instant. So that's what happened this past week. Well, it's been going on for a little more than a week, but the college Democrats at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, where Alex Morse used to teach, he's now the mayor of Holyoke, and again, he's a congressional candidate. They put out this letter alleging Alex Morse of doing things that made them uncomfortable when he was a lecturer, essentially an adjunct professor at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, right? So this is this is when he was between the ages of 25 and 30. He's a young guy. And I should also note that he's gay because the hit job that I'm about to describe has an extra layer of a homosexual trope involved that really disgusts me and shows you just how unbelievably toxic cancel culture can really be. So these college Dems put out this letter telling Morse that he's no longer invited to their events. And then they list all of these allegations against him. Like, and I'm not even kidding, this was a literal allegation against him, matching with students on dating apps like Tinder and Grindr when he was an adjunct professor. So in order to match with anyone, right, you would have to note in your profile that you're looking for a certain demographic. Remember, he's between the ages of 25 and 30. And there are students in colleges between the ages of 25 and 30, and you can match with anyone, right? It's a two-way street. And so he matched with students, and they thought that was good enough. If he's matching with students, well, then he must be a predator. We're going to list this as something that makes him, not worthy as a candidate in this congressional race. Having sex with students, by the way, none of which were his actual students. So he was accused of having sex with students at the University of Massachusetts Amherst and its like sister schools. Okay, just so ridiculous. Sending messages to students that made them feel uncomfortable. So they allege that Morse would use some of these campus Democrats events to pick up college students, and then he would proceed to add them on Instagram and send them messages that made them uncomfortable. So later, it turned out that these allegations were nonsense. Even before we had evidence that these allegations were nonsense, I called it out and I said that it was pretty sickening to see people on the left repeat or regurgitate some of this stuff, because it was so clearly a hit job. It was so clearly the weaponization of cancel culture to destroy a candidate who really does threaten the material interests of the wealthiest people in this country, right? But leftists fell for it, and it was devastating. I'm going to give you a few examples right now. So these are tweets that emerged after these allegations came out. Disqualifying, pure and simple. I'm sorry to the survivors of this misconduct. Okay, great. The College Democrats of Puerto Rico also chimed in on this, sending our support to College Dems of Massachusetts and to the survivors who bravely told their stories. By the way, no one was on the record with their names. Everything was incredibly vague. And we didn't hear from a single person who actually engaged in any type of intimacy with Alex Morse. Let me give you more. This is so disappointing to see as a colleges college Dem alum and former, until now, supporter of his campaign. I'm glad that the people targeted by this misconduct spoke out. I'll give you one more. He can only have sex with someone of an equal power level. If he has sex with someone of lower power, he's an opportunist. If he has sex with someone at a higher power level, he's unable to make his own decisions. We are now a caste system. And remember, he had no power over anyone that he allegedly had sex with. He did admit that he had sex with college students, but he was young himself, and none of them were his college students. And, this, never-ending backlash over a ridiculous story that should never have been published in the first place led to calls for an investigation. And as you can expect, the University of Massachusetts at Amherst publicly announced that they will investigate. UMass Amherst hires lawyer to investigate allegations against Alex Morse. Then you have the presumptive representative, Jamal Bowman, who just won in a stunning upset in New York against a corporate Democrat, Elliot Engel. He decided to distance himself immediately and release this statement. As a school principal, I believe it's important to listen to students and to be sensitive to the unequal power dynamics in these relationships. That's why I've decided to put a pause on my endorsement and any campaign activity for Alex Morse while we learn more about the situation. And after Bowman's statement, we also learned that the Sunrise Movement, which, by the way, has not rescinded this statement, decided to distance themselves as well. Bowman's statement comes after the Sunrise Movement suspended its campaigning for Morse. Additionally, the group's Western Massachusetts Coalition announced on Monday that its members voted to rescind its endorsement of the Holyoke mayor. Yeah, but maybe they should have actually looked into these allegations and gave their ally, someone who is literally a political ally, the benefit of the doubt. Instead, they decided to immediately, and I'm going to use this phrase, they decided to immediately virtue signal, to claim moral superiority, to claim that they're the good guys, and that they are willing to, at the drop of a dime, turn their backs on someone who actually wants to fight alongside them for the policies they claim to care about the most. But I guess climate change isn't really that important when you can go ahead and signal to the world that you're morally superior, right? Absolutely pathetic. And then guess what? We learned the truth about these allegations. Let's watch.
One of the things that the students had alleged was improper was that he had added students to his close friends' stories on Instagram. And they use language something like, in a way that is commonly known to indicate intimacy in our generation, something like that. Okay, so now it looks like, based on this Intercept reporting, we have that conversation in question. Here's what they said. Thank you. Good to see you too. How's the rest of your weekend? Mm-hmm. Alex Morse says, really controversial stuff there. The student replies, pretty good. I went home last night to surprise my mom for her birthday. How about you? Pretty. So Morse then says, that's nice. How was that? I had an event to go to last night to speak, then had a wine tasting party at a friend's house. Now I'm in North Adams about to march in a parade. Okay, so that is the conversation in question.
Reading that thing.
The Intercept also got
you should have given a little warning there.
I know, it's offensive to people. I do apologize in advance. And so the students communicated to each other as part of this setup. They were like, read that message. Also, don't mind me totally leading him on. And then Ennis goes on to say, this will sink his campaign.
This will sink his campaign. So who is Ennis? Well, that's Timothy Ennis, who was at the time the head of the University of Massachusetts Amherst Democrats, campus Democrats. And he described himself as, I'm not even kidding, this is real, a Richard Neal stan. Richard Neal is the corporate Democrat who Tim Ennis thought would give him, you know, an entry into the world of politics. Apparently, Richard Neal, a politician, a corporate Democrat, was teaching a journalism class on campus that Ennis was taking. I mean, the story just gets more and more bizarre. So due to his, career goals, Ennis decided to try to help Richard Neal out by sinking Morse's campaign in the most disgusting, toxic way possible. But what I want to have people really understand is that the current culture we're living in had already primed us to accept normal human activity, right? A person like Morse having sex, which is normal human activity. We were primed to think that that's unacceptable. We were primed to think that we have to publicly condemn him in order to signal to the world that we're good people. And it was so devastating to see that happen because, first of all, it relied on a homophobic trope, right? This idea that a gay man was preying on these young boys. That was really the, underlying issue here. And, that culture of cancel culture, again, primed us to accept that, right? As a reality, as a truth. And publicly condemn this person who hadn't done anything wrong. It's absolutely disgusting. And so, look, I think that there is a moral issue here. I mean, I think if you really care about morality above everything else, how is it moral to destroy the life and the career aspirations of an ally, just based on nothing? Based on the most vague accusations, and the vague accusations themselves, even if true, didn't indicate that he did anything wrong. No one accused him of having sex with one of his own students. No one. So what exactly did he do wrong? I literally don't understand it. So is he just not allowed to have sex? And it made me think of like the Reagan era and how conservative culture became in that era because of Reagan's policies and because of all the fear mongering that happened with AIDS and HIV. And so I'm like, wow, when did leftists become, worse than conservatives in the Reagan era when it comes to our lives, our personal lives, our culture, all of that? And so there's that portion of it, but there's one other portion that I want to talk about. And this is really what Michael wanted to focus on, because there's a strategic component as well. The left needs to appeal to a broader base of people. We just do. And you're not going to do that. It's not going to be an appealing, fight to join if you're constantly worried, if you're living in fear about something in your personal life going public and then people twisting your personal life into something that's worthy of condemnation, right? And I think all of us know this. I think all of us feel this. I think all of us are constantly walking on eggshells. It does absolutely nothing to improve the lives of people who have been disenfranchised in this country. All we've been seeing is a bunch of superficial change to give us the optics of reform. Things like renaming things or condemning certain people or firing certain people. But when you take a step back and you look at what's happening and how society is changing, are we noticing any fundamental reform in the way disenfranchised people are treated in this country? We're not. And we might get a little bit of like a rush by seeing someone's life get destroyed if you disagree with them politically. I mean, I think that's weird and questionable anyway. But other than that, what happens to really improve your life or the life of others? And how do we just run away from this ideology and focus on something that's a little more compassionate, that understands that people are flawed, but create a society where we're willing to engage in dialogue with people in order to help them evolve. And Michael really did that for me, not when it comes to racial issues or cultural issues, but he did that to me when it comes to, just my views on capitalism and socialism. I didn't even realize how much of a capitalistic bubble I was operating under. I didn't really understand the critiques or criticisms of capitalism. And to be quite honest with you guys, every time I would engage in any type of conversation about capitalism with leftists, it came from this incredibly judgmental and pretentious place that made me want to reject their arguments. But Michael came at it from a completely different perspective. He brought me in, he was understanding, he was patient, he was kind. And I learned more from him than literally any other person in, the media landscape because of his willingness to hear me out and not judge me, right? So we need to think about that as we try to build the socialist, movement in America. And, one of the people that Michael really turned to when it came to some clarity on this issue was Dr. Cornel West. And I promise I'm almost done with this segment, but I do want to leave you with what Cornel West has to say about cancel culture and what he refers to as, fortified solidarity.
Well, I think the first thing to say is fundamentally it's not about identity. It's about solidarity. It's not about your skin pigmentation. It's about the quality of your courage connected to poor and working people. I don't believe in canceling anybody. I mean, Christians don't believe in canceling people. Everybody can bounce back. I believe everybody's a brother and sister, and they have the capacity to be changed and transformed. So I don't believe in canceling anybody whatsoever. But I do, in fact, say that when we talk about wokeness, I'm not talking about just being woke, because you can be obsessed with wokeness and suffer from insomnia. I'm talking about being fortified. Are you a fighter in the long run? We don't want people woke and sprinters and run out of gas, and the next thing you know, they end up well adjusted to injustice. That's like so much of the bourgeoisies, no matter what color they are. Middle class folks that just can't wait to be engaged in upward mobility in order to go mainstream and become a new star with all the spectacle and overlook what's going on the ground of people who are suffering. That's not the model. The model is Martin King, Fannie Lou Hamer, and Ella Baker. What are they talking about? Fortified. Are you fortified for the long run? Do you have your cemetery clothes on? Are you coffin ready to live and die for something bigger than you, like a fundamental transformation of a capitalist civilization? That's my tradition.
Amazing. That video is so incredible. So incredible. So Nando, I want to bring you in. God, I love that video so much. Because, the thing that I've been just puzzled about is how do you dedicate your life to being part of a movement? Let's say you've joined Sunrise, you're putting in the hours, you're putting in the work, you understand the threat of climate change in this country. And then you so easily, not in this country, in this world, I mean, and then you so easily turn your back on an ally who understands the importance of that fight. I mean, and so is your activism, is it genuine? It makes me wonder. Or is that part of your career trajectory? You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, I think what Cornel West talked about at the end there is the key, is that even so many people, I mean, it's normal in a way that have internalized the logic of neoliberalism, competition, that we're all kind of in competition with each other. Even people who understand that kind of intellectually have internalized that. So that's why you see people in the Sunrise Movement, and I don't want to single out the Sunrise Movement, but just in general, even on the left, who have internalized that sort of desire for upward mobility, and that often just comes at the expense of other people, right? So it's just, but that's the system we exist in. We have to transcend that. I mean, that's something that Michael always talked about, is you have to transcend that somehow. It's living within you in a way,
Mm-hmm.
It's been beaten into our brains since we were children. So yeah, I mean, and it's just, this, first of all, your commentary was spectacular and incredibly well done. And it got me thinking about how, the real kind of horseshoe theory is that, wokeness in a way is often kind of accepts the premises and logical conclusions of insane white supremacists, this idea that you cannot have any power imbalance in a relationship leads to some pretty weird conclusions. For example, any interracial relationship, there's going to be an inherent power imbalance. If a white man dates a black woman, Whatever, you're just gonna like, how do you navigate that? You know, like, are you supposed to like not do that because there is a power imbalance there? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
I
and
met
that
my
leads to-
husband when he was an employee at a nightclub.
Hell yeah.
I mean, there's a power imbalance. I know. I mean, there was a power imbalance there, and I mean, he seemed to like it. But just keeping it real. But I just want to live in a society where we're not judging the personal lives of two consenting adults. Like, what are we
Yeah.
doing?
No, yeah, it's insane. I mean, people tried to cancel Glenn Greenwald for his relationship with his husband, and it's really toxic and it's insane, and it's just a huge barrier that we have to overcome to like you said, build a mass movement, and it's just. This Alex Morse thing also just got me thinking about how short our memories are and how we need to learn. I mean, Jamal Bowman, he's new to politics, and in a way, I don't blame him. I understand that the problem is the culture that exists and that he's entering. But like, look what they did to Jeremy Corbyn. You know what I mean? Like these are, and it's been revealed beyond any reasonable doubt that was just a pure hatchet job. You know what I mean? And many people on the left, like good, well-intentioned people, like accepted those premises. And it's just like, you just got to see a hatchet job for what it is. And it was so painfully obvious. And you just have to you have to be able to be strong and support your allies when there's just the slightest bump in the road. Because if not, we're just going to fall apart every single time. And the people in power are very, very smart about this stuff. They know how to exploit these insane kind of things, and they're like, oh my God, this is going to sink his campaign. I just like that guy Ennis, man. What kind of psycho do you have to just be like a 20-year-old college Democrat who's like a Richard Neal stan and wants to just like end the career? You know what I mean? Like, it's just really terrifying.
I mean, Ennis, for people like Ennis, it's like two consenting adults, effing. Yeah. Unacceptable. Like, we're going to go ahead and demonize. But Richard Neal effing you when it comes to your health care, that's okay. I stan Richard Neal. Yeah.
Listen, Bill Clinton is going to have a prime speaking spot at the DNC. He's going to be a keynote speaker. Liberals are going to gush over it. They're going to love it. This is a man, if we want to talk about problematic sexual encounters, power imbalances. I mean, a 22-year-old unpaid intern at the White House when you're the president of the United States, not to mention all the Epstein stuff. So yeah, recognize bad faith when it comes. I mean, and that's the lesson you have to understand is like, it's all bad faith. They don't actually believe in any of this shit. It's going to be used as a cudgel against the left. That's exactly what you have to realize. It's just it's never going to be used to cudgel against them. They're going to survive all this stuff always. It's just because they have power. It's going to be used against people who don't have power, who are trying to challenge that power. So you have to transcend that and transcend it within yourself.
I love
transcend
that. Yeah.
it within yourself.
And understand that, the fight is bigger than you. Michael preached a lot about having a little humility. And I do think that's important because once you feel the need to publicly call someone out, just take a step back and ask yourself, like, hey, how would I feel if someone knew about this crappy thing that I did in my past? And we've all done crappy things. Come on.
Yeah.
Like, we're all
I'm trying to think
flawed.
what's my worst moment, like, and if that was aired publicly. I mean, I just feel so bad for Alex Morse. I mean, this just has to be like the most traumatic, painful thing. Like every single time he engages like with someone romantically, he's gonna be in the back of his mind. He's gonna be thinking like, oh my God, like it's impossible not to.
I saw it happen like firsthand to Cenk Uygur when he was running for California's 5th congressional district. It was one of the most difficult, devastating things to watch happen in real time, especially as someone who I've been close with for over 13 years. I know him really well.
Yeah.
And cancel culture has been used as a weapon to destroy the left, and it has worked. It has worked. And that's what we need to be cognizant of.